Jadi izinkan saya meneruskan pembentangan saya bagi dalam bahasa Inggeris bagi memberi peluang lebih ramai mendapat manfaat daripada topik hari ini ya. Ladies and gentlemen, in our past, we were a Malay maritime society, and yet today, unfortunately, there are no big boats that survived the era, no surviving cultural and economic legacy from this maritime civilization. If the fact was not recorded in written words from many, many sources, including foreign records from China, from Japan, from India, in our Hikayat, we may not find this easy to believe. The fact that we were once a great Malay civilization. And as I mentioned before, the Malay Archipelago is actually one of the most unique regions in the world where we have over 25,000 islands connected from the Philippines to Indonesia, Malaysia to Borneo, and today almost 600 million people reside in the maritime Southeast Asia. But hundreds of years ago, it was the Malay kingdoms of from Champa, Srivijaya, Majapahit, Malacca, Patani, and Lanka and Kedah, and so many others, they are numerous, which pioneered the formation of the Malay maritime kingdoms. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, a lot has been lost from this time. And what we are going to do today is trying to find what we have lost through the words revealed in our Hikayat. So we are trying to put a map, build a map from these words. Before we start, ladies and gentlemen, I will actually touch briefly on Hikayat Melayu, even though perhaps it is a subject well known among all of us. But it's important to have a look at the source. We know that the Hikayat Melayu was among the most popular and oldest form of literature that epitomized the civilization and cosmopolitan lifestyle of an ancient era. It was part classical literature that was generally shared through oral storytelling in the past. And then this was later preserved on available natural resources like bamboo, lontar palm leaves, tree barks, using locally made ink using soot, rice cinders, cobwebs, squid ink. And when trade became more global in the 16th century, 15th and 16th century, paper became available to us. And the Hikayat stories found its way to being immortalized in the manuscripts. And for many years, the Hikayat was just that, legends and folklores used to entertain and captivate an audience, to record our histories like Sejarah Melayu, Hikayat Marumah Wangsa, and Misal Melayu, and perhaps just that. However, I've been fortunate that over the years I've been researching, retelling, and rewriting our Hikayat in attempt actually to bring it to a new audience, to the younger kids, to the children. But my research has shown me that the Hikayat can be just as revealing as archaeological findings in showing us a life as it were hundreds of years ago, if not thousands, in the Malay archipelago. And this is not limited to our Hikayat. All of you would know our pantun, our syair, our gurindam reveals a way of life highly dependent and connected to the seas. And this is just one of many, but this pantun shows that rumah kecil tiang seribu, rumah besar tiang sebatang, kecil-kecil ditimang ibu, sudah besar ditimang gelombang, which roughly means the kampung homes with many pillars, but mansions with strong foundations. And when we were in our cradle, our mother rocked us, but later in life we sailed the oceans. Now, the words in our Hikayat and our pantun point us to our past, where the sea was very much part of our lives. So when we talk about the Hikayat, let's just have a look at that pantun again, yeah? When we talk about the Hikayat, which were transmitted through oral storytelling, oral retelling, and the legends and folklores, we have this marvelous wealth of stories um, of many genres of storytelling. There's the classical, there's the tragedies, there's the epic, there's the janaka. There's so many forms of them, and the stories were enthralling. But as we pay attention, particular attention to the language and the words, then we realize that the narratives and the vocabulary are actually like a time capsule, as revealing as if we had a photo or video from 500 to 1000 years ago. Let me read this excerpt. One of my favorite hikayat is the Hikayat Awang Sulong Merah Muda. And this excerpt talks about when Awang Sulong's cousin, the Princess Dayang Nurama, was getting ready to sail the sea with a crew of entirely maidens. And it went like this. Himpunkanlah anak-anak dara datang menghadap ke istana. Lalu bertitah Datuk Batin Alam kepada bujang selamat. Pergilah kau panggil mualim, jurubatu dan jurumudi sekaliannya, suruh siapkan kakap. Bunga rampai layangan angin itu serta alat senjata, alat peperangan. Maka awang bujang selamat pun memohon pergi mendapatkan mualim, jurumudi, jurubatu sekaliannya. Maka segeralah jurumudi menggerakkan sekalian hulu balang memuatkan obat bedil, peluru serta menyiapkan meriam senapang. Apa yang kurang disuruh ditambahi. Tinggal sekalian anak-anak dara di atas kakap. Ada yang menjadi mualim, jurumudi, jurubatu masing-masing dengan jawatannya. Maka kakap pun berlayarlah. In short, ladies and gentlemen, a crew of maidens travelled with the Princess Dayang Nurama on the kakap or ship, Bunga Rampai Layangan Angin, complete with firearms at sea. And after the ship was completed with all these implements, all these elements of obat bedil, weaponry, firearms, then the maidens took over to sail the ship. And so here is here it doesn't stop here. Far out at sea, the princess then saw the geliung panjang belonging to the Javanese princess, Putri Dayang Seri Jawa. Both ships raised their yellow flags. That's protocol, yeah? And she boarded the geliung. Again, she was welcomed with sirih, exchanged pantun, the courteous offering among nobles. This is protocol described in our Hikayat Melayu. And here is a story. We only remember the story, well, when I was young, I only remember the story of two princesses, eventually four, fighting over this dashing Awang Sulong Merah Muda. But as we hear with our inner voice, the background story, not a story of damsels in distress, but of Sri Kandi, who braved the seas and used the firearms and cannons and sailed the open sea on these ships. And this is what is supposed to inspire our younger generation, or our people for that matter. The stories that show how adventurous men or women our people were. And these stories are important to inspire future generations. We have here a sculpture, the Honorable Pirates from some time ago at the Allegory exhibition by Shafiq Alam. And this is one way that our hikayat inspire the younger generation. And we have so many legends like this. We have Laksmana Hang Tuah, whose legends appear in the Vijayanagara walls, Rukyu records, Hikayat Hang Tuah, Malay Maritime Odyssey, the Hikayat Hang Tuah, regales his story, his legend to Majapahit, Bentan, Lingga, Palembang, Aceh. Professor Muhammad has his translation that is now read by all, so that we can bring out these legends once again. When I was growing up, Hikayat Hang Tuah was the legend, and somewhere along the way in the last 20 years we have put him aside because we believe there are controversies surrounding him, forgetting the legacies of aspiration, of seeing the world, being a universal man, all that. So we need our heroes. Enrique the Black, or Panglima Awang, as he's popular known, the first man who circumnavigated the world. We have many who acknowledge this, but we'll come back to this when we talk about Malacca. Ladies and gentlemen, I must say this again, among so many learned historians and academicians. I'm a storyteller, not a historian, but glimpses into this ancient life through the Hikayat convince me more than ever that our Hikayat are the memories of our ancient civilization. And in legends like this, a slice of our people's history lay frozen in time, akin to, again, I mentioned, a time capsule that we can open like a box of delights in our future centuries later. So when we read the Hikayat today, coupled with other knowledge that we have now, we begin to piece together the existence of the Malay kingdoms throughout the Malay Archipelago. And what is most interesting is that we find popular world legends and epics found its way into our Hikayat. Why? Why is that? It indicates the exchange of culture resulting from contact point made through trade and religion. We know that. We'll come back to this, but surely this is an indication how our people traveled the world, and more importantly, our legends traveled as well. And our literature, our Hikayat, bears witness to that. Beyond that, through the Hikayat, we see into the mind of the Malay mind 1,000 years ago. Can we imagine that? That we can actually look into the minds of our people from long ago. Tun Sri Lanang, Hang Tuah, Sultan Mahmud, Tun Fatimah, perhaps. In Suratus Suratin, a king thought of vessels that could dive far deep into the ocean. And Raja Chulan travelled to Dika. He said in Sejarah Melayu, he wanted to build sebuah peti, kaca berkunci dan pesawat dari dalam. That is his mindset, his thoughts. Whether it's built or not, whether it's fact or fiction, really doesn't matter to me. But in his mind, he saw this vessel. And if we listen to our Mak Yong stories, the Mak Yong tales tell of this prince and men who sailed ships that were stranded when the wind died. And this was their peril at sea. They understood that at the sea, in middle of the sea, the winds can die, and that could mean great danger to them. And as I mentioned earlier as well, princesses who sailed the oceans to pursue their love in their adventures, we find words like terompong, bongkasau, kakap, geliong. When we read the stories about the Ganga Negara and Gelangui, we hear about fortresses that were built surrounded by mountains and lakes, etc., etc. This was in their mind, thoughts of how a beautiful landscape should be, not only on our in our manuscripts, but on the various tablets we find all over the region. The Malay man, or rather the Malay man or woman, were world travelers and were innovators that really had a sense of self and being. So where so the Malay people belonged to a certain place, a place that where marvelous legends happen. For now, we will discuss perhaps Semenanjung Tanah Melayu, strategy located along the busiest waterway of the world, the Straits of Malacca, which was a world destination since ancient times. Do we believe that today, that our world was a key destination in the ancient times? When I know all of us have seen this, but the Ptolemy map in Egypt, what does it have to do with Hikayat? But his maps were actually like a novel that recalled the history and interesting stories of the world of an ancient era. And imagine how exciting was the story of the Malay world at this age for us to be a key landmark on his map. Not every destination could be a key landmark on his map because Ptolemy built his map while sitting in Egypt. Sailors brought him word of lands from far away, and so sailors brought word of the Oriaknosis, the Semenanjung Melayu, because in that time there was no South China Sea, no Gulf of Siam, no Malaysia, no Thai, no Indonesia. What you have from his geography map was Ptolemy's Scythia, Pakistan, Senia, China in the east, and the island of Taprobane in Sri Lanka, and of course the Aurea Chersonesus, one of the earliest confirmed maps of our land, an important landmark together with China, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And it even captured local names: Koliopolis, Kelantan, Kongko Negara, which we have in Sejarah Melayu as Gangga Negara, Primula, Terengganu, Sungai Atabas, Sungai Pahang, Muar. At this time, it was possible that the Gulf of Siam was called Primulic Sinus, Gulf of Primula, and the South China Sea was called Magnus Sinus, the Great Gulf. Thus, we follow the trail of the Malay kingdoms through the regions, so many of them, and we have to try to understand the relationships between kingdoms, their thoughts, their beliefs. Ini semua kerajaan Melayu lama yang kita ada. Ini semua saudara kita di lautan kita. We understand the relationships between the kingdoms, their thoughts, beliefs, motivation, their way of life, aspiration, existence. What inspires the moves the people by understanding the nuances of the language in Hikayat, because the Hikayat is where they recorded their history and their beliefs and their aspiration. And we know, yes, since the first century, the Hindu influence was evident in the Malay Archipelago. And when Islam made its debut centuries later, little by little, there was a transition of culture and beliefs that led to overlapping of influences. This only proves further that the Malay Archipelago was the transit and meeting point of many world travellers. Kita tahu mereka semua perlu melalui Selat Melaka, selat yang paling sibuk di dunia masa itu, untuk salah satunya the Spice Trade. Satu lagi membawa agama dan perdagangan melalui Selat Melaka. So the spice this region was so famous for brought traders and influence, this further influence and spiced up our already colorful classical literature. So that's how everything moved throughout our world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps we are ready to have a look at some of the major kingdoms traced in the Hikayat and other sources. The Hikayat being a wonderful map, actually, of our ancient Dunia Melayu. Now, Lanka Suka. We start with Lanka Suka. It was a kingdom that existed on various levels in the memories, ancient kingdoms that appeared in many old records in Siam, China, and our own Hikayat Ramahawangsa. And it was a most grandeur Malay epic, telling the story of Lanka Suka. The story goes to tell the story of Raja Mahawangsa, who traveled from the west to the east on the way to China. Well, he was escorting a prince of Rome, and when we talk about Rome, I know many do not agree with this thought, but in my readings and in my interpretation between the lines, I truly believe that this Rome was the Rome of Fatih took over the Uthmaniyah Empire when in 1453 he conquered. We know he conquered Constantinople, and he declared himself as Rome of Kaiser. And for the next 100 years, including in the early 1500s, that was the Rome known to the Muslim world. So I believe the Rome here is really the Uthmaniyah version. But anyway, Raja Mahawangsa, as they were sailing their ships that entered the straits, they were attacked by the Garuda, which resided on Lankapuri. And Raja Mahawangsa took refuge at the beautiful cape. The people of the land built a fortress, and the people made him king. The new kingdom was called Lankasuka. And when he wanted to seek a bride for his prince, Mahawangsa looked to Aceh and Kelingi. And this is how it was related in Mahawangsa. Maka sembah menteri tua yang keempat. Tiada tuanku negeri yang dekat-dekat ini. Patik sekalian beroleh kabar, hanya ada negeri pun kabaran di Pulau Perca, negeri Aceh. Namanya tuanku. Ada sebuah kerajaan di susul laut jua negeri itu, banyak jua takluknya. Dan pelayarannya 25 hari daripada lamanya dari sini, dan halanya sebelah tanah daratan kita ini ada pula sebuah negeri. Nama rajanya Kelinggi, lautnya di sebelah kita datang jua. Negeri itu pun jauhlah jua pelayarannya sehingga sebulan berlayar. Maka sampailah terlalu banyak segala yang ajaib di dalam negeri itu. Once again, this shows the relationship between all the kingdoms. We sail from kingdom to kingdom. And today, we know that there are documented proofs of the existence of this Malay kingdom as referenced in Chinese and Indian ancient texts, pointing to an early civilization near Gunung Jerai, Kedah circa 100 AD. And for instance, the Chinese records from the Liang dynasty refers to Lang Ya-Siu, accepted generally as Lankasuka, and the Buddhist monk Yi Ching recorded his meeting with monks from Lang Xia-Shu. Later, during Song dynasty, the kingdom was known as Lang Ya-Si-Xia. And in this instance, it demonstrated how, first in our Hikayat, a clever fusion of fact and fiction, and then we have this recorded history of the kingdom to create this beautiful, believable Hikayat that is preserved throughout the millennia. We also have Hikayat Pasai. Hikayat Raja-Raja Pasai is perhaps, we know, the earliest work in Malay on the first Malay Muslim kingdom, Samudra Pasai. I love that name, Samudra Pasai. In the story, Marasilu met Muhammad, the Prophet, peace be upon him, in his dream and accepted conversion to Islam. And at the end of the Hikayat, I'm going to take us past all the Hikayat and go right to the end when it describes the conquering of Pasai by Majapahit. And it goes, the Majapahit king. Senapati pun mengerahkan segala menteri, penggawa dengan segala rakyat naik ke bahteranya masing-masing, bermuat dengan segala harta rampasan dan orang tawanan terlalu banyak dimuatkannya hingga syaratlah segala kelengkapan itu seperti itik berenang di air. Demikianlah rupanya segala kelengkapan, maka berlayarlah kembali ke negerinya dengan kemenangannya sepanjang laut dengan tempik soraknya. Hatta beberapa lama ia di laut, maka sampailah ia ke Jambi dan ke Palembang. Maka singgahlah ia di Jambi dan di Palembang. Maka kedua-dua buah negeri itu, such illustrious kingdoms, by the way, in our hikayat and history, menunggul dan berserah senjata, maka takluklah kedua-dua buah negeri itu ke Majapahit. Ladies and gentlemen, again the hikayat shows us the relationship between kingdoms and also the ability to sail the seas and the conquering of kingdoms in the Malay Archipelago. And this just shows the civilization that there is nothing wrong with Iliad and Odyssey. But what is Iliad and Odyssey if it's not Hikayat? And we have to remember that the Iliad and the Odyssey was the legend that inspired the Greek and in later times inspired the Roman, and in later times, believe it or not, inspired the Americans. So it was the legends that sparked all that off. And if we do not believe that our legends can inspire our people, we are not opening our eyes to the world around us. We are not opening our eyes to China, who takes from their legends to name their satellites that travel the space today. Whenever China creates new stories, they never forget to infuse it with their legends, with their dragons, with their goddesses. They take from their past to inspire the future, and this is what we have to do with our hikayat, and why I love the hikayat so much. So we have to look to our own odysseys to find inspiration, not chuck them aside, left frozen in time for maybe 20 years until Professor Muhammad's translation came about and people dared to talk about Hang Tuah again. We also have records of Pigafetta, who sailed the Ferdinand of Enrique the Black, who sailed with Ferdinand Magellan and Tome Pires, who were proof that the Malays were great sea masters. Was no coincidence that our famous heroes were admirals at sea. And we have professors, Dr. Joyce Chaplin from Harvard University, who believes that the man who first circumnavigated the world was a Muslim and a Malay, a diplomat and a linguist. I'm not sure about the Muslim part, but the Malay definitely. I have also had the opportunity to have personal discussions with Professor Costa, who's now in Portugal. He told me over breakfast in Singapore, Ninot, go along with your storytelling. The academia world generally believes that Enrique the Black, Panglima Awang, was the first man to circumnavigate the world. Maybe it's a narrative that the Western world does not want to admit, but it is generally accepted. And we, being from the Malay world, should be the ones who champion it. We also have these stories which maybe historians do not want to agree with, but we have the story of Aceh. We have the story of Aceh. Or before that, I just want to highlight the Enrique de Malacca Memorial Project, EDM, by Ahmad Fuad Osman, was funded by the Singapore government and was taken around the world. This was the exhibition at Sharjah Museum. So during the UAE Biennale, Art Biennale. So we have to believe in our legends because other people do. And other people will, if we do not take care of our legends, many others would claim it for their own because they are great sources of inspiration. Now, from Dunia Melayu, we have the first female admiral of the world, Laksmana Kumalahayati of Aceh, who was, it was said, admired by the Queen of England. And she captained the, she was an admiral of the Aceh Navy. And her stories are recorded for all time. And when we talk about Perak, the first king of Perak, Sultan Muzaffar, we talk about, number one, Sultan Muzaffar is a real person. He was the son of Sultan Mahmud of Malacca and later of Kampar, and also the son of Onang Kinang, a princess of Kelantan. So he was a real person. And how he came about was when Tun Saban sailed to Kampar to invite, to besiege Sultan Mahmud, to give one of his sons to become the Sultan of Perak. And when I visited Lenggong recently, I saw structures of mosque that Tun Saban built as ordered by Sultan Muzaffar. And we have from Misa Melayu this pantun or this retelling. Perahu bergelar raksasa Indra, sikap seperti singa utara. Awan berarak mega antara, usulnya tiada lagi bertara. Di dalamnya banyak alat senjata, meriam rentaka, lengkap semata. Senapang pemuras jangan dikata, sekaliannya bertatah podi semata. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will not take too long with this, but I just want to say finally that the Malay Hikayat often reflects our ancient way of life, which is actually part of our history. It is a different type of history, but history nevertheless that records the way of life through spoken words, written words from long ago that has proven faithful in its interpretation until today. This is reason enough to continue to explore the Malay Hikayat and study the coded secrets they reveal us through reading, through deep appreciation and wonder at their beauty. And for so long, we have been made to believe we are not world navigators, we are not world conquerors, we are not inventors and artists. How wrong can we be? Look at the skills on the slide. These are works our people produced. Beautiful inventions. How unfortunate if our children do not believe in this. Our legends and folklores are truly the memories of our ancient civilization. I say this again. Our legends and folklores are truly the memories of our ancient civilization, let us reclaim our sense of pride in our knowledge. Let us reclaim our sense of pride in our place in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Puan Ninot, for such an inspiring and interesting talk. We have learned a little bit more about Hikayat and how it can be viewed in a modern context. Dan untuk sekarang saya mempersilakan sebarang persoalan, pertanyaan daripada para penonton dan juga peserta yang mengikuti wacana ilmu kita pada pagi ini. Dan juga I would like to welcome Professor Muhammad Haji Saleh, our president for the PERSALIMA and all other members here. Thank you for joining us today. Dan dipersilakan sesiapa sahaja yang ingin bertanya soalan kepada Puan Ninot. Dipersilakan. Ada soalan sebelum
boleh tak saya cakap sedikit, Dr. Nasrin?
Boleh.
Saya nak mengucapkan tahniah kepada Puan Ninot kerana mengingatkan kembali kepada beberapa hal yang sudah kita lupakan. Yang besar-besar seperti Melaka itu kita ingat, tapi ada banyak yang lain yang kita lupakan. Dan cukup menarik ialah bahawa Puan Ninot ni dari latar belakang sastra Inggeris dan juga bahasa Inggeris. Dan mungkin seperti saya juga kerana dipisahkan begitu lama dan diajar melihat bahawa yang Inggeris, yang Eropah itulah yang baik, kita sudah diajar untuk melupakan pencapaian kita. Jadi Puan Ninot telah membawa kita kembali kepada hal-hal yang sangat dasar, yang sangat perlu kita ingatkan dan kita jalinkan dalam pengajaran sejarah sekarang ini. Oleh itu, janganlah tolak-tolak sastra lama ini, tolak sastra lisan ini, kerana itulah kita. Bila kita buat buku-buku baru ini, sebahagian besarnya kita simpan, pinjam daripada orang putih. Tapi yang ini tumbuh daripada tanah kita di Sabah atau Sarawak atau Aceh atau banyak negeri-negeri lain ini. Inilah kita. Dan kita pun juga sebagai bangsa yang pernah berjaya dan mungkin kita boleh lebih berjaya kalau kita kembali melihat kejayaan masa yang lalu. Itulah saya nak katakan. Ya, baliklah sekali melihat karya-karya besar kita. Hanya satu lagi saya nak sebut, saya sedang mentranskripsi Hikayat Hang Tuah yang terawal, iaitu 1758 yang ada di Leiden. Betapa saya seronok ya mengikut bahasanya, mengikut kata-kata yang langkanya dan mengikut cara berfikirnya yang juga cantik, yang juga unik. Jadi saya juga dari sastra Inggeris. Sebab itu saya rasa memuji sastra kita kerana kita ada yang sama baiknya dan bukan orang putih saja yang ada. Ya, itulah. Tahniah Puan Ninot. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Prof. Muhammad. Puan Ninot, any response to
saya bernasib baik ya. Saya sangat bernasib baik kerana dalam perjalanan saya menulis, saya mungkin ramai tidak tahu, tapi saya akan bawa saya punya manuskrip, tunjuk pada Profesor Muhammad dulu. Dia pun mengambil masa untuk membaca dan menasihatkan saya. Jadi saya sangat bernasib baik kerana saya ada macam Profesor Muhammad, dulu Profesor Ding, iaitu anak didik Profesor Muhammad juga. Saya ada Profesor Costa yang saya boleh email pada dia di Portugal tu, dia akan balas. Kadang-kadang buku-buku saya ni, saya email pada Datuk Dr. Annabel dan dia akan baca, dia akan betulkan. Jadi saya ni, saya tak malulah sebenarnya ya. Saya tak malu saya nak bertanya pada yang lebih arif, sebab saya kata saya bukan academician. Jadi kadang-kadang saya takut nak masuk this space. It's very scary for me to tell you the truth, to tell everyone here. Dan kadang-kadang saya kena kecam dengan ahli sejarah. Tapi saya beritahulah, saya respect sejarah. Cuma saya perlukan sejarah sebagai background. Jadi saya kena membaca sejarah dan kemudian infuse it into our hikayat. Because again, my mission, my end game is very clear. Saya ingin memberi sesuatu yang untuk anak generasi ke depan ni, supaya mereka boleh bangga untuk mengatakan mereka itu dari tanah air kita. Itu tujuan saya. Jadi saya ambil daripada hikayat, daripada sejarah, but it is not senang-senang begitu, because ada banyak, I need to put a lot of consideration. When I have people like Profesor Muhammad, Profesor Ding, dan ramai lagi, dulu masa arwahnya ada Profesor Harun Makpia, Al-Fatihah untuk dia. These people really help me. Jadi kita sebagai mungkin yang pelopor baru, we must have respect for those who are more in the know, and then our hikayat will have the kesinambungan. Dia akan daripada dulu sampai sekarang. Dan satu lagi, saya minta sangat, bila kita, ini untuk penulis lah mungkin, dan untuk mereka yang ingin memertabatkan hikayat Melayu, ini juga nasihat. The first time I met Profesor Muhammad, he told me, have you read other literature? Di Jogja dia tanya saya. You must read other literature. You must read maybe Southern American literature. You must read. Jadi saya pun gigih membaca. Ini dia mungkin tak ingat lagi tu. But in 2012 he told me this. Saya pun rasa, alamak, my writing is not so good. I have to improve. Jadi saya pun membaca American, Southern American literature, Brazilian literature, Chinese literature, Indian literature, Japanese literature lepas saya berjumpa dengan Profesor Muhammad. Jadinya lepas tu ada, I think I'm more connected and I can see the world. Dan kita baguslah, orang dulu dia melihat dunia tu melalui belayar. Saya pula belajar kini melihat dunia tu melalui membaca hikayat-hikayat dunia. And so the world becomes very big for me. Itulah saya nak kata. Pengalaman saya dalam dunia sastra ni.
Okay, terima kasih Puan Ninot. Ada sebarang persoalan lagi? Ya. Ya, Doktor. Silakan.
Tahniah Puan Ninot, selaku seorang penulis yang sangat imajinatif, menguasai kosakata baik dalam bahasa Melayu atau Inggeris yang sangat membantu dalam penulisan. Puan juga seorang yang saya nampak mempunyai ketajaman berfikir, dapat mengaitkan masa lalu dengan masa kini itu. Maksudnya Puan sangat sensitif dengan persekitaran yang zaman lampau dengan yang masa kini itu. Jadi saya sangat bangga dalam hal ini. Pertanyaan saya, antara Hikayat dengan Penglipur Lara, kedua-duanya memang akan menceritakan juga puisi-puisi, akan tercipta puisi-puisi di situ. Cuma saya tertarik tadi, kalau di dalam Hikayat, bila berlakunya pelayaran, ada pelayaran, dia akan mungkin ada berlaku usik-mengusik antara penumpang-penumpang kapal itu, terutama sekali antara teruna dan dara, dan dia akan menciptakan puisi, terutama sekali, ayalah puisi lah, puisi ke pantun, pantun, sorry, akan terciptalah pantun-pantun yang indah. Jadi dalam Penglipur Lara, dia juga buat satu pengambaraan, adakah di dalam pengambaraan itu juga ada tercipta puisi-puisi sama dengan yang sewaktu dalam pelayaran itu. Oke.
Okey. Ada.
Itu sahaja pertanyaan saya.
Okey. Ada. Itu sebab saya begitu gemarkan Awang Sulung Merah Muda, kerana daripada Awang Sulung Merah Muda ni dia sebenarnya satu cerita yang satu hikayat yang mudah ya, cerita cinta mungkin, tetapi dipenuhi dengan segala bukan saja di pelayaran tetapi di daratan juga, segala cara penghidupan zaman dulu, dan kehidupan itu dilestarikan dalam bentuk pantun. Dalam bentuk pantun atau bahasa yang sangat indah. Jadi memang ada, kerana itulah naluri orang kita zaman dulu. Kita memang suka menggunakan bahasa yang indah untuk bercinta dan juga merantau dan juga menghadapi tragedi. Itu cara kita menceritakan kehidupan kita, be it tragic, happiness, love, etc. etc. Jadi kita bila kita membaca, itu sebab dalam buku saya semua, doktor, saya masukkan bahasa yang indah ini dalam bahasa Melayu. Walaupun buku saya bahasa Inggeris, saya akan cuba masukkan yang bahasa Melayu itu dan saya beri interpretasi saya sendiri. Because grand language ataupun language, classical language is really part of our being. And if we separate ourselves, that's why nowadays, if we separate ourselves from the grand language itu, kita agak kehilangan. But bila kita baca bahasa yang indah ini, naluri kita, we are in tune dengan jiwa kita yang sebenarnya. So yes, it's always there, ada.
Okay, terima kasih Puan Ninot menjawab ya, Dr. Mina. Okey, baik. Saya ada persoalan berkenaan dengan bagaimana dalam konteks penulisan, terutamanya penulisan kreatif masa kini, kebanyakan kalau kita melihat penulis-penulis Malaysia ini, mereka kurang maknanya menerapkan ataupun mengambil semula ataupun terinspirasi daripada cerita-cerita warisan kita, melainkan beberapa orang sajalah, termasuk Puan Ninot sendiri kan. Jadi kalau kita melihat contohnya penulisan ataupun kalau saya boleh katakan rewriting of myth ini dalam bahasa Melayu dan juga bahasa Inggeris, setakat ini Puan Ninot lihat perkembangan dia macam mana? Boleh tolong beri komen sedikit.
Saya lihat semasa inilah ya. Mungkin kalau 5 tahun dulu kita rasa macam tak ada, kurang. Kalau 5 tahun dulu kita sekadar menceritakan cerita lama dalam bentuk lama. Tetapi sekarang saya lihat contohnya ya, Selepas saya menulis Lipo Lara Nusantara oleh Patriots, tahun ni saja ada 2 penulis akan menulis koleksi buku, koleksi Hikayat dan Tamadun Lama Melayu. Salah seorangnya apa nama dia? Awan Majandra, saya rasa nama dia lah. Dan seorang lagi Abdullah Siddiq. Dan saya juga akan mengeluarkan satu lagi buku hujung tahun ni, Lipo Lara Nusantara kedua. Pada masa yang sama, kita lihat sekarang ni, buku kalau berdasarkan hikayat lama, bestseller. Bestseller, novels ya. Bestseller. Dulu kita ada ramai sebenarnya. Dulu kita ada Faisal Terani. Lepas tu kita ada
Ambil awam mungkin.
Yes. And then kini kita ada lepas tu kita ada siapa tu? The journalist who wrote tentang ramailah. Sekarang ni memang ramai. And buku-buku ini novels especially are becoming bestsellers. Betul. Jadi saya boleh katakan dia sedang berkembang. Mungkin tidak pada yang tahap terbaik, terbaik, tetapi dia sedang berkembang. Pada bulan Oktober tahun lepas, masa Frankfurt Book Fair, saya dijemput untuk dijemput untuk temu ramah daripada Frankfurt, dan juga penemu ramahnya daripada New York. Tajuknya ialah Stories from the Malay Archipelago. Dan menerima banyak good response. Jadi boleh katakan Dr. Nash, the Malay Hikayat, the Malay legends are on the rise.
That's good.
But from books, it must go to 3 main areas kalau saya rasa lah. It must go to, macam kita tengok the Chinese, the Korean and the Japanese ya. It must go to TV, Netflix. Ya, cerita siri drama, historical fiction. Historical fiction is very popular. Whether Chinese or Korean. Itu satu. Nombor 2 yang lebih penting lagi saya rasa is e-games. Legend kita kena masuk e-games. When our legends are in e-games, then we see our younger generation picking up. So Netflix, e-games. Dan ketiga, kita mesti ada anime movies. Maksud saya bukan anime movies lah, animation movies.
Okay.
Bila kita masuk ke platform yang baru ni, modern ni, but we must have the content. Kita mesti ada karya. Kita mesti ada penulis seperti geng-geng kami ni lah. Dan saya, I want to give credence ya. Buku-buku saya dia popular bukan sebab cerita saya saja. Saya ada a team of illustrators yang bersama-sama saya bertahun-tahun. Saya ada, hari ini ada dengan kita, ada Walid Muhammad daripada Melaka. Saya ada seorang lagi, Danny Wagait. Mungkin Dr. Nash kenal kot, dia from Kelantan. Dan juga Ariana Ahmad, residing in Dublin. Dulunya ada arwah Malik Rahim, kini dia dah tak ada dah. Dia dah buat 8 buku dengan saya, he passed away. So I have this team of illustrators yang saya tak segan silu, memang diorang seperjuangan dengan saya. Saya tulis buku, mungkin 6 bulan. They take 6 months or 1 year to do the illustrations. Sama sama-sama. That's why buku saya dia ada traction sikit antara among the young, because kita ada this illustration. Dan it's so important. Tapi lepas buku, it has to go to animation, folklore, kena ada Netflix, kena sebagainya. Saya sekarang ni bekerjasama dengan Eugene Fu Eugene Fu, dia dan Hani Ahmad, mereka buat daripada buku Penipu Lara Nusantara, dia buat short film Wali Nongsari, the first one. Dia orang tengah buat sekarang. So saya sebagai penasihat saja. Penasihat dari segi konten, cerita Wali Nongsari dan apa yang saya tahu daripada, sebab saya kampung daripada Pahang kan. So apa yang saya tahu saya share. Tapi my input is as far as what colours should be used, what accessories should be used, what kapal should be used. Nak menyusul sungai, kapal perahu macam mana? Macam mana? Semua tu, semua is from my input. We share dengan the creative people. Jadi kita tak boleh kita saja, kita kena kerja dengan ramai orang. So that a lot of people can take advantage of the wealth in Hikayat Melayu. Macam tu lah. So collaboration amat penting.
Okay. Terima kasih Puan Ninot atas penjelasan yang begitu bagi saya. It's quite inspiring to listen to all these stories about how we can actually learn a lot from our hikayat. Dan maka demikianlah wacana ilmu kita pada hari ini, dan saya mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada Puan Ninot Aziz yang sudi berkongsi ilmu dengan kita pada pagi ini, dan juga tahniah dan syabas atas penyampaian satu wacana ilmu yang bagi saya sangat bermanfaat, dan semoga wacana kita ini akan diteruskan pada masa yang akan datang. Dan tidak lupa juga untuk saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua peserta yang sudi meluangkan masa hujung minggu anda bersama-sama kami di sini untuk mendengar sedikit perkongsian ilmu tentang khazanah warisan dan budaya kita. Jadi kalau tadi Puan Ninot memulakan dengan pantun, so saya mengakhiri wacana ilmu kita ini selaku moderator, saya Nasirin Abdillah. Jadi saya akan mengakhiri wacana kita dengan serangkap pantun. Sebunga seroja di atas para, jatuh ditimpa buah berangan. Andai kata tersilap bicara, kemaafan jua kami pohonkan. Sekian, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih semua.
Terima kasih Dr. Nasirin. Terima kasih Puan Ninot. Terima kasih Prof. Terima kasih audience.
Oh, boleh kita
Terima kasih
buka,
AJK.
buka kamera kejap nak ambil gambar.
Okey. Sila buka audience. Kita ambil gambar.
Kita ambil gambar sekejap. Boleh buka? Yes. Boleh buka semua?
Pelajar-pelajar saya dari kesusastraan, sila buka, jangan malu-malu. Oh, takut dia orang.
Apa khabar Walid? Terima kasih datang. Okey. Okey,
dapat dah?
semua. Yes.
Okay.
Okey, Assalamualaikum.
Thank you all. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum.
Bye.
Bye.